What's going to set everybody up for success, individual and the company, is listening to the voice of the customer and then acting on it. Like, the customer will tell you exactly what to do if you're paying attention. There will always be competitors and there will always be a couple of winners at the top. And so it's really about how do you make sure that you're one of the winners that is the most sustainable? And are you continuously listening to the voice of your customer and then building either a product or a service that delivers on that? If you want to use AI the best of your ability, it's not to replace a salesperson by any means. It's to superpower a salesperson and to accelerate that go-to-market motion.
Are there any tools or technology that you wish you had that you haven't found yet?
Oh my gosh, so many. Okay, so
Hey Rachel, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
Well, can't complain. Just moved back to Canada. As you can see, the office is not ready yet, but again, I'm excited to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here and welcome back to Canada.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm excited. All right, Rachel, before we start a conversation officially, I'd really like to get to know you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what you're working on now?
Okay, great. Well, I am a 4-time growth stage executive. I've spent about 2 decades helping companies to grow and scale without breaking what makes them great. So that means that I've led cross-functional teams from 13 people to 4,000. I've owned P&Ls anywhere from 10 million to 160 million. And I am obsessed with building high-performing teams that have engulfed sales, customer success, marketing, and operations. Happy to go into details of recruiter if you'd like.
I love it. No, I wanted to actually talk about, how do you get started in sales? And just tell us a little bit about the journey that you progressed and, current team that you're working with.
So my journey into sales was really interesting. I actually started my career in crisis public relations. And what I learned from that was I was really, really bad at press releases and the whole PR component, but I had a knack for pitching stories to the media. And so what I decided to do was go learn how to do sales because that seemed like it was easy. It was fun. Easy, it's not, but it seemed easier than writing press releases and doing that side of the job. So I went to a company called Regency Office Products. They had and I chose it purely based off the fact that they had a training program for sales because I'd never done it. And I loved it. I was there for 6 years. I was going door to door selling office supplies, printing promotional products and to businesses. I had no idea that was gritty, dirty work, if you will, but I just loved it. And from there, I ended up, after 6 years of working as a hunter and also owning our key accounts, I decided to make a switch and I found Groupon. So Groupon, this was pre-IPO, changed my entire view on all things sales and just business in general. So I learned about no constraint thinking. I learned about moving really, really fast and providing value to multiple stakeholders at once. So I was at Groupon for almost 6 years. I started as an outside sales rep. I was a divisional sales manager there, a regional sales director. And when I left there, I was running our travel division as the head of sales. So that was about 64 people or so. I then bounced into health tech. So the theme you're hearing here is I've never been in the same industry twice. But I jumped over to health tech and worked at a company called Outcome Health, where I was really, really excited about the product. We were helping patients understand their chronic conditions, and I just loved that. And it was such a great way to get into the healthcare space. From there, I grew Provider Solutions as head of Provider Solutions at that organization. And then I was recruited to join Compass, so a whole other industry in real estate. And that was another really big turning point for me because it expanded my role from sales only to sales operations and more of a holistic generalist general manager. So I was there for about 5 years. My first 4 years there, I launched and grew regional businesses for Compass, which is the #1 independent brokerage in the US. So I launched our Chicago land offices, grew that from a couple dozen agents to over 3,000 agents. And the go-to-market playbook that we built, we then expanded into Minnesota, Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio. And I had a team of about 4,000 agents and 150 staff supporting those agents, everything from onboarding through customer journey and experience, upsell, retention, et cetera. And then my last year at Compass, I actually got to work on a national level. So I had the privilege of working to increase our agent retention and the value that our agents were getting from the brokerage, and to drive tech adoption for the company nationwide. So to do that, we launched 8 national programs that were community-based, L&D, business growth-based, but really we were also driving technology adoption of the platform at the same time. From there, I went to a company called Techstars, which is the #1 pre-seed early stage investor globally. And I ended up there by following an executive. And ultimately, at my role at Techstars, I have been leading U.S. expansion and strategic growth across 38 different accelerator programs. So what that means is my team was responsible for sourcing and selecting the founders that Techstars makes investments in exchange for equity. And then we're also responsible for putting on, building, implementing, scaling, and delivering the best possible business accelerator program so that our founders can grow as fast as possible, and get the right support that they need from mentors, alumni, businesses, and then be invested in for the next stage.
I
So
love
I've been doing that for a number of years now.
Look, it's very fascinating, and it seems like you have a knack for getting into leadership position. So anywhere you've been, you started it, said, "Hey, I carry the bag, I learned the game," and then somehow, and we want to get into that as well, you end up being in a leadership position. But let me ask you this: like changing industry, it's not an easy task. Like you
No.
need to learn about everything pretty much, the playbook that maybe does not even exist for someone from another industry. What you were looking for, if you don't mind me asking.
Yeah. So I didn't know I was looking for this. I didn't realize it was sort of like a table stakes for me, but I constantly need to be learning. So I'm incredibly curious. I think that's what
Mm-hmm.
made me a really strong salesperson. And what I love about switching industries is not only are you learning like a new industry overall, but
Mm-hmm.
you're also learning a different playbook in some cases, a different customer voice. So it's like a challenge on a challenge on a challenge. What does not change, the business problems, regardless of industry, remain the same. The
Mm-hmm.
sales process remains the same. So what you're learning and what I was drawn to is the need to like improve and get better, like 1% every single day, better by doing the same process, but a bit differently for a different audience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes absolute sense. So let me let me ask you a tricky question. Look, it sounds like you sold to enterprise clients. You still most probably selling to internal, yeah, internal teams and
Mhm.
also founders. So what's the hardest sell and why?
Yeah, they're all challenging in their own way. But I would say the most complicated or the most challenging sale is founders by a mile.
Why?
And the reason for that is, an enterprise sale is really complex. So that
Mm-hmm.
has its own difficulty, if you will, but there's process and logic and stakeholders and budgets and ROI that's a bit easier to, walk people through and get buy-in on. With founders, I mean, if you put yourself in the seat of the customer, they are selling vision all day long. And oftentimes they're receiving feedback, a lot of no's, just like salespeople, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're getting feedback. And oftentimes that feedback is viewed as friction. And so
Mm-hmm.
selling to a founder, not only are you needing to honor their ambition and their viewpoint and the fact that they're often the decision maker of all things, but you also need to challenge their blind spots in a way that doesn't feel like an attack. And so it's this really interesting balance of like part psychology, part sales process, sales strategy, but most deeply like trust and respect.
Mm-hmm. I love this.
Founders all day.
So, so look, I'm sure you bring some of your, past experience into the mix. So you train your team to have the best conversations with the founders. To your point, not to burn the relationship because we are passionate. We want to talk about changing the world. We have great ideas, but sometimes again there's no fit, and that's the reality that your team has to face and communicate this with the founders. How do you train your team to actually do the job? Because you're not in the room. They have to deal with the founders.
Yeah. So there's so many different aspects for the training. There's like on the job, and then there's like what you can do behind the scenes. So some of that behind the scenes training is making sure that my team and myself, I put myself through the exact same experiences. And I do this regularly, daily, quarterly, et cetera, is to really make sure that they understand the customer. And in order to understand the
Mm-hmm.
customer, that means that they have to go shadow the customer. So maybe they're going out on with a founder to a pitch, or if they aren't one of the people on the team who is watching the pitches happen, they can sit in on them, even though it's not their actual job day to day. But it helps you to put yourself in and just to grow your empathy for what they go
Mm-hmm.
through every day. You need that in order to be able to know how to speak to them, what vernacular are they using, what's their language overall, but also what are the pain points and how can you be empathetic to them and really present a solution. So number one is to put yourself in their shoes in whatever way that is, read the things that they're reading, go on the sales calls with them, or be exposed as much as possible. The second thing is to take best practices from each other. So I think it's really important as a leader to bring your teams together in order to be able to understand like what's going well for other people, what's a new best practice they just tried, and how did it work, what led them to it. And on the flip side, and sometimes even more importantly, like who's stuck, why are they stuck, and then let's crowdsource potential solutions for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this, a follow-up question. You mentioned something very important. You said it's all about the customer, knowing and understanding the customer. And
Yeah.
would you categorize different founders, not based on industry only, but based on personality,
Mm.
and say, hey, guys, this type of founders, this is how you communicate the message?
I would definitely make it industry agnostic, which I think
Mm-hmm.
most people may not do. But since I think about business problems, not about like what industry, since I believe they're
Mm-hmm.
transferable. So I would start there. In terms of like founder personalities, I actually would lean not into like the founder, but I would bucket almost like a disc profile still.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you're a founder or you're the CFO of a Fortune 500 company, either way, you are approaching communication styles and process as a high D or a little C, whatever it might be. So I lean really heavily into the disc profile more than I do a founder personality. If I needed to talk about a founder personality, though, I might say there are founders who are really visionary only, and then there are visionary operators. And so you want to speak to those two groups of people pretty differently. If someone is visionary only, then maybe it's better to have them bring someone along who's an operational thinker, because that'll do two things for you as a salesperson. Number one is it will help you to communicate in a way that they understand, because you'll have someone to translate for you into founder speak in their language. But also it gives you the person on the other side of the table who can actually help you understand the internal processes that you're going to have to overcome, timelines, steps, legal, whatever it might be. A founder may not, if they're visionary, they aren't in the weeds on those details. They don't necessarily know what's happening day to day. And so having the right champions in the room will be really beneficial.
I love it. So you use your internal resources exactly like sales. So can you tell me a little bit more about your team? Like what they're doing? I'm just curious to understand what kind of sellers are they? Like how does the sales even works as Techstars?
So there's two kinds of sales at Techstars. I'm going to talk about both because I think they're really different and yet quite similar. So sales bucket number one is more of an internal sales. So the
Mm-hmm.
Techstars overall, the whole goal is that we invest in the greatest founders possible. In exchange for that investment, we get a percentage of their business and equity, and they receive the support, the network, and the accelerated business opportunity that we provide.
Mm-hmm.
So the sellers on the front end of that process are those who are trying to find the right founders and then need to convince them in the best way possible that the fit is there, that they should give up 6% of their business in order to come over and be a part of the Techstars community. That's not a small ask, especially of an early stage startup. And so they're selling on the opportunity that's available to them and the cost of not doing an accelerator program with Techstars. So that's sort of group one. Group
Mm-hmm.
number two is a group of individuals that's selling to corporate partnerships. And so what that looks like is you can be in a Techstars program that's funded by the Techstars LPs, or you can be in a Techstars program that is like white labeled, if you will, and is actually powered by a corporation. So the person selling to the corporation is really talking about what can the company get out of being a part of the Techstars community? Are they
Mm-hmm.
interested in growing their brand as an innovator and forward thinker? Do they have research and development needs that maybe having this pipeline and access to all these startups could internally like allow them to create something internal or do an acquisition instead of build from scratch, so whatever it might be. So quite different sales, but all the same process in terms of like deep discovery, make sure that the what we can deliver from a value perspective matches the need, and then deliver all day long.
Right. So I assume you've done both jobs. Is that correct? How did you start actually building a process that works under your leadership? And can you just give us some details of like how things work actually from the time you get your sellers, involved?
So what we looked to do was create scale, but with individualized snowflake specialty, if you will. So when you're looking for a founder, the step one is, what are the criteria that we're evaluating that founder on? And so do they or do they not fall into that criteria? And what sort of like range of falling out or falling in is acceptable? So we standardize that across whether you're doing, fintech startups or you're a, health tech startup. Ultimately, the founder themselves, their experience, their tenacity, their team, like those kinds of things. That's step one. So qualification of the founder. Then step two that we created, not a playbook, but a process, if you will, for was the actual discovery part of what does the founder hope to get out of it, not only for them, and so that we can make sure that Techstars is the right fit, because sometimes we're not, and that's okay, but also are they the right fit for Techstars, meaning, are they open to pivoting their idea? Because oftentimes businesses will come in and think they're one thing. And by the time they've finished a 13-week accelerator and they've done different and deeper customer discovery, they've recognized that their go-to, like their market fit the product doesn't fit the market, and they've had to pivot. So are they coachable? Are they open-minded to that? So we're looking for fit as well in the discovery questions. And also in the discovery questions, what do they want to get out of it? What does success look like to them? Can we meet those like measurements of success and do so in the 13-week time period, or what does that look like? And then after the natural discovery, now it's like, okay, let's move forward on the investment itself. And then when they come in, each program has an outline of like, this is, and I say program meaning the 13-week accelerator has an outline of, this is what we do. Month one is all about understanding the customer. Month two is really like building the momentum. For example, month three is all about getting ready, like investor ready, and doing the investment piece of the business. So although each program will be a little bit different based off the thesis, that framework is the same. And so there's core curriculum that everybody's trained on, that we iterate every single time to make better. And the flexibility within that framework allows for us to meet the founders exactly where they are in their business at the time they need it. Because I might be talking about in curriculum programming, I could be talking about, customer discovery, but I'm actually like still in product market fit and I need to do a financial model. Who knows?
Okay,
Yeah.
so I appreciate you sharing. Let me ask you this. So you guys work with founders directly, and you see all the changes with AI. Companies come with a small team; they bring a lot of value to the market. So I wanted to hear from your perspective, what's going on in 2025 and moving forward with go-to-market? What's really changing? What are the things that we are waiting to see, popping up soon?
Yeah. So, I mean, buzzword of the day, AI, right? And by of the day, I mean of the year. But truly, I'd say AI is making a huge impact in sales. What I think is happening, and my perspective on AI
Yeah.
in sales is, if you want to use AI the best of your ability, it's not to replace a salesperson by any means. It's to superpower a salesperson and to accelerate that go-to-market motion rather than totally like replace it at a cheaper rate. So I think that allows for that hyper-targeted outreach that we had talked about earlier, value first engagement overall, creating like tighter revenue loops between marketing and product and other decision makers in sales overall. I think on the flip side, there's an art and a science to sales. And so you can't replace that go-to-market motion or that person that's driving it. All you can really do is create the process doesn't change, but the ability to execute against that process, you can change the speed at which you're operating and the functionality of it all. So that's how I'm looking at AI, is like, how do I make things move faster? How do I automate the things that are painful and low value in my day to day? So whether that's like, lead generation, I can have a tool that's going to talk to each other on the back end, and I'm not moving, copying and pasting things from one place to another. Like automate all that, remain like keep the high value art and science of the sale to the person.
Look, it seems like we're advocating the same thing. Let's make the sellers, do their job better rather than replacing them. Would you say you are against AI SDRs or anything AI to take care of sales altogether, or no?
I am against replacing the person. I am absolutely for amplifying them. So what I mean by that is I don't see yet the ability for replacement of an SDR per se. What I do think what we could do is automate a lot of the work an SDR would do. Like there are typical, if you have your ICP nailed down, then you know their pain points, you know, like the ideal customer profile. You should be able to speak to them in a language, and there should be formats and basic like templates that you can use. That's where I think AI can come in handy, is to build out that framework with you. And where I don't think AI can replace is in the actual sales process, the discovery questions, and all of those pieces of it.
I would say when it comes to human connections, when it comes to building trust, at least for now, AI cannot do it. But based on technologies that you guys, again, bring as your startups, part of your portfolio companies, what are some of those technologies that you see have big impact on sales organizations, if you can be specific? And which ones are not actually, doing so great, although even Techstars thought it could be a great idea, or,
Yeah, some of the AI tech that I think is most helpful to sales organizations and personally to me, note taking, any of those kinds of tools, outreach, where not only are you able to really focus because you don't have to write everything down and think you're going to miss something, but it also allows for pieces of like actionable next steps, a clear summary, the full transcription if you need to go back and like refresh yourself on something. More than that, I love that these tools tell you what percentage of the conversation did the salesperson talk versus listen, because that is so wildly important as you're coaching and developing as a salesperson or a leader to coach and develop your team, to understand like who's doing most of the talking and why are we not listening more? What questions did we ask, and all of that piece. And knowing what percentage of the conversation was positive versus neutral or negative, I think is really helpful as well from a sales tool perspective. And it speeds up your ramp if you really utilize the analytics from the tools that you use every day. Really helpful.
Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, you just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails. These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With Sell Me the Spend AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only: revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at sellmethespend.ai. The whole market is getting really crowded, and when it comes to sales tech, obviously we are building a sales tech, and we noticed that too. A lot of people come, they can quickly copy part of your solution or not. What are your suggestions for founders or any companies? Like I had a CRO here the other day. They passed $70 million ARR, and he was complaining about this too. It's like, hey, dude, like I see tiny companies come and they add a lot of value, being very real about everything, and we're worried that our client churn. So how can we build moat around what we offer beyond technology?
Yeah. So I think technology alone cannot be your moat. And
Mm-hmm.
so I would, if I were talking to that CRO, I would ask a lot of questions to understand what is the value that the company is delivering through their tech, and is that surface level value, or how many levels deeper can you go? Like what is the cost of not using that? And that becomes your ultimate moat. If you can understand where do if you're going to lose a customer, it's because your product or service is not delivering the level of value that they need. So is that in a specific lane that you're missing? If it is, then add that lane to your offering in some capacity. If it's bigger than that, if it's pricing, or to me, pricing should not be the reason you lose a deal. It means to me that you did not do your discovery well enough and don't actually understand the value that your customer needs delivered, and or the solution you're presenting isn't fulfilling them enough. So to build a moat, you have to do really strong customer discovery and make sure there's strong product market fit. There will always be competitors. I mean, when I was at Groupon, it was like clone wars of the competitors.
Hmm.
And there will always be a couple of winners at the top. And so it's really about how do you make sure that you're one of the winners that is the most sustainable throughout the journey of that clone war, if you will?
Hmm.
And are you continuously listening to the voice of your customer and then building either a product or a service that delivers on that so that they don't need to question the value they're getting from you?
Hmm. Hmm. Fair enough. Can we dig a little bit deeper into this?
Yeah.
Like, do you have any real life examples? Like, you said Groupon, and like this is a
Yeah.
great example. How did they actually stand out? Like when things got busy and market got tough. Like, can you give us some specifics?
Yeah, it was super challenging. I mean, when Groupon was the first to market for the e-commerce space and group buying and
Mm-hmm.
coupons and deals, whatever way you want to look at it. And then there were all overnight, there were like hundreds of
Mm-hmm.
competitors. And the competitors were small and there were large ones. And so to compete against that, we had to do a couple of things. One is nailing down your ICP was like so wildly important. We had to change the business model a bit. We went from having one deal a day to having multiple deals a day, and then creating like marketing efforts around all of those to reach different audience groups. So changing the algorithms and adjusting the technology of the business, as well as adjusting who the sellers were going after to meet the needs. So that supply and demand of the marketplace needed to change overall. Much harder to not automatically want to discount the rates that we were giving to the merchants, to the businesses. So really, we changed our discovery to make sure that we were really getting to the root of the problem that they were looking to solve. We built ROI calculators and
Mm-hmm.
different tools that we didn't need in the first couple of years because it was we didn't have the competition and the
Mm-hmm.
price complexities that we did when we had all those competitors.
Very interesting. So this is what I'm hearing. You had to change the playbook again. You still serve the same ICP, is that correct? Or you switch ICP as well?
The ICP changed a bit over time. It
Okay.
started with like in terms of one adding verticals. So it started
Mm-hmm.
mostly with activities, or we added healthcare or health and beauty, and then
Yeah.
you more restaurants and others. So depending on the market, we had to switch who we were going after the most,
Mm-hmm.
and consumer buying habits really dictated a lot of that. And then also the range. I mean, in the beginning, we didn't have all types of brands at all different price points. We had, a top restaurant, and that was it. You had to then have top restaurants, and also how could you package a quick serve restaurant? It's a wildly different customer, and a very different customer experience if you're sitting down to a full meal versus going to a Chipotle. And so
Mm-hmm.
the way that we sold the model had to change. Instead of a 50% off the meal, we had to create packages like 3-time visit. So that had to change as well.
Mm-hmm. And when was that? Like Groupon was already an established, company when competitors, starting showing up and it got very busy.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it happened pretty quickly. I mean,
Yeah.
Groupon was around for a couple of years, operating with the single deal of the day. And
Mm-hmm.
within like overnight, there were tons of competitors that popped up because it was a low barrier to entry to build the
Yeah.
actual tech. It was the supply and the demand of the consumer buying, and did you have the right merchants on the site that really drove success at the end of the day. So, I mean, I remember a big pivot was around 2012, 2013, where we needed to make a bunch of changes in our product market fit, and also our customer, how we talk to our end user customer, the buyer of the coupons, if you will, and also how we talk to the merchants, the people who are putting the inventory on the site.
This is so interesting because it says a lot about being agile. So it's not the beginning when you're pre-seed or seed
Totally.
stage. You always constantly
Always.
you need to find ways to basically be different, if you will. So
Completely. And I would say the through line, no matter what size organization you are, no matter where you are in your growth journey, what's going to set everybody up for success, individual and the company, is listening to the voice of the customer and then
mhm.
acting on it. Like the customer will tell you exactly what to do if you're paying attention.
That's absolutely true because while you're telling this, I kind of like reminding myself about those conversations with some of our clients. They help you build your even product roadmap and the
You do.
services you offer. And some part of things you do is just super crappy and you don't know.
Yep.
By getting closer to client, you can find out about that. But I'm really curious about Groupon's case because at that time, again, you were kind of like semi-established, if you will.
Mhm.
You already had an audience. Other people can learn about all that really quickly as well. So competitors can, watch your moves.
Oh yeah.
So how could you just ensure that they don't copy, your newest strategy?
You can't. I mean, you should
Mm.
assume that they will. If it's a good strategy, it's going to
Yeah,
get copied. It's
yeah.
flattery at its finest. So it's really about being the fastest and most agile to market on whatever pivot you're making,
Hmm.
and then doing such a good job that when the competitor comes around, the customer, both in Groupon's case, the merchant, but also the end user, wants to
Hmm.
continue to work with your brand, and the loyalty increases because the product value and offering is so strong.
Hmm. Would you say it's mostly about getting enough market share as quickly as possible, and then going from one niches to another and keep expanding? So there is no end, end game here. You have to keep expanding in different directions. Would that be fair?
It would be fair. And I would add, you have to make sure this is the hardest part while you're expanding, and whether it's different verticals or geographically or whatever it
Mm.
might be, you have to make sure that the value and the service you're delivering today stays at the same quality or greater. Like you cannot let this ball drop while you're spinning this plate. I just combined a couple of things, but you get it. So you have to keep
Mhm.
it all moving up and to the right at the same time, which is the hard part.
It really is. So my last question:
Yeah.
Is there anything in sales tech? Are there any tools or technology or service that you wish you had that you haven't found yet?
Oh my gosh. So many.
Shoot.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So personally, I want to like combine a bunch of different tools to make a stronger CRM that I can use, both professionally, but also like for my consulting business. So I think there's some pieces of each platform that's great. And I want to combine them because there's still pieces that are missing. I think that I am not a fan of time tracking for the sake of time tracking, but I personally know that I will have a paradox of choice, or I will choose to spend time on the things that are fun for me rather than like the energy vampires that my business actually needs me to invest my time. So I want to like I use Sunsama to like
No.
help me understand, plan my day, plan my week, maximize my priority time, but also to make sure that I'm spending my time in the right places. I want to like superpower what that does for me today and have it spit back recommendations to me on what should I be doing differently? How could I have saved myself time in XYZ? And now with AI, like tell me how to build it. That's what I want. Can you
Awesome.
make that
Look,
happen?
maybe we made part of it happen. But the funny enough, most of our audience are CROs, VPs, enablement leaders from mostly enterprise, organizations. But
Mm-hmm.
for founders who are listening to this, there you go. Rachel is here. So if you have your MVP, can they reach out to you, Rachel?
Please, please do. Absolutely. Just notice that it's spelled Rachael when you hunt for me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Great. Look, I appreciate you taking the time. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Me too. It's so
And
fun.
serious note, if someone wants to reach out, can they and how?
Yes, please do. So you can hit me up on LinkedIn, of course, or on you can email me personally. It's Rachael.L like Lee, my middle name, .rose at Gmail.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you very much. And
Thank
I guess
you.
until next time, bye for now.